Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we are finally going to talk about OWCS China because we finally have our 8 teams that will be competing in the regular season in China. Kind of a shortened season this time around. It's not as long as some of the other ones because of course the tournament's going to be happening here in a few weeks, the Hangzhou tournament. So I think it's just this weekend is the only set of games we have. So very, very quick turnaround here. But today, I want to talk about the 8 teams that are going to be competing. I don't want to break down each roster too much. I'm going to kind of look at the 2 different groups that we have. There's Group A and Group B, 4 teams in each. I want to look at those groups and just kind of give you my general thoughts on each of those groups and the teams that I think should do the best in those groups. And I'll preface that by saying part of the reason why this is the format that I am going with is because I don't know a lot about the Chinese Overwatch scene of 2025. And a lot of that is because, of course, since 2022, 2023, I don't remember when exactly it happened. I think it was like the end of the year 2022, beginning of the year 2023. Overwatch was not available in China, and it was not made available again until a couple of weeks ago, month ago, whatever it was. So the scene obviously has seen some changes. It's not as robust as it once was. It's a little more... it's a little newer. It's a little different. And so a lot of these players are ones that I just don't know all that well. And that's part of why I'm so excited for China to be back, because we get to see some really, really cool talent, kind of up and coming, and also the return of some players that we know and love and have seen in the past. And it'll be very, very fun to see, and it'll be really interesting stage this weekend. Hopefully going forward it gets a little bit more of a normal stage, I imagine, because of the time between the reintroduction of the game and when they wanted to have their first tournament. The Chinese region kind of has a truncated schedule, and so I would imagine going forward things will be a little bit different here in China, but at least for stage 1 this is what we're looking at. So now that I'm finished yapping away about that kind of disclaimer, let's talk about the 8 teams that will be competing. And those 8 teams are Rock Esports, once again, Blade, Super Levi, Little Sheep, Team CC, Team XX, and Team Equal. Those are your teams. They are the ones we're going to be seeing here. And so let's start by talking about Group A, which is the group with Rock Esports, Blade, Team CC, and Team Equal. This group, I think, is probably going to be more competitive than Group B. I think there's a little bit more... the talent level is a little bit closer in this one than it is in Group B, just based on what I have seen and just what I think based on the teams that we know. And I think this group is most likely mainly a 2-horse race between Rock Esports and Team CC. A lot of well-known players, a lot of Overwatch League veterans in this group and across those 2 teams. On Rock Esports, you have Choi Se-won and Bellasaria, who are coming over from Korea, who competed last year in OWCS Korea. Choi Se-won was on what was the name of that team? He spent time on Poker Face as well, but he was on Genesis, that team with Decay, and then he went over to Poker Face, and they had a very good year last year when he was there. And then Bellasaria was on From the Gamer and moved over to Poker Face as well. So they've been playing together for some of last year, and they are joined by Dia, Billadeng, Langsa, and Molly as the Chinese players in this roster. Now, Billadeng is a player I'm not super familiar with. I assume he's the off-tank player to complement Bellasaria as main tank. Plays a lot of Winston, a lot of ball in particular. But then you have Dia, very well-known player in the Chinese scene, one of the kind of standouts from that not very good 2018 Shanghai Dragon season. Saying not very good is kind of an understatement. And also he had a bit of flashiness on the 2022, was it? 2022 LA Valiant roster? 2022. That didn't have a great year, but Dia kind of was one of the standouts on that team. And then you had the Langsa Mali support line. Langsa was, up until recently, was on once again, which is, most people would say, the best team in China. We'll see if that holds true, but he was recently on there, and they made a change to bring in another support player we'll talk about later. But he comes over to this team and joins Mali, who Mali, of course, another very well-known player, was also on that LA Valiant roster with Dia. Spent some time on the Shanghai Dragons and the Chengdu Hunters, and a little bit of time on the Guangzhou Charge as well. So, very good player as well. I think one of the players I really loved watching when he was on Chengdu Hunters in particular. I don't remember if he was there the same time Langsa was, if I'm being honest with you. I don't fully remember. But Langsa was on that really good Spark roster, the kind of last year of the Overwatch League. And then, like I said, spent time on once again before now moving over to Rocky Sports. Was also on the Chengdu Hunters for a little while, was on the LA Valiant team. I think that same one that Monk was on. So there is some crossover between these players that have kind of played together recently. And so this is one of those things where I really like the support line. It's a highlight of this roster. Very good damage dealers and a tank that I really believe in. And so I think this team should be the favorite to be the top team in this group. But I would be remiss to not also mention this roster from Team CC, because I think they have another roster that is similarly comparable, though not fully the same. I think the standout player on this Team CC roster has to be Gaga. Maybe the best main tank in China behind Gu Shui. One of the best that has been produced from China for sure. Very good Wrecking Ball player, but also has a lot of things like the Winston that he can play. I don't know what his game is looking like now, what other tanks he's kind of added. That's one of the things about China that'll be very interesting. Overwatch has obviously added a bunch of heroes over the past couple of years. I know that there are players in China who've been able to play the game. They have ways of getting around some of the server things, but I'm curious to see what kind of thing we see. Do we just see a return to like the Wrecking Ball dive, the Winston dive? I've been watching some stuff, because there obviously are games that you can watch from the qualifiers, where they can be found. So there are games that you can look at and you can kind of see where the scene is at, but it's a little difficult to read. But I am very interested to see kind of what we get here. But from what I know, it's been a lot of Wrecking Ball. Winston, of course, especially when you're dealing with a team like once again, it's going to run on the Winston, and I know there's been some Malga, so there is obviously still some kind of crossover there. But I think Gaga's probably the star player on this team, the one to really look out for. He's got a very good support line with Super Rich and Farway, primarily. Two more Overwatch League veterans. Farway spent a lot of time on the Guangzhou Charge, and I think was on the Chengdu Hunters for a little bit as well. Super Rich was on the Hangzhou Spark in 2022, I believe, before moving on. And then they have Pineapple on this roster, who is a bit of traditionally a hit scan DPS player, but also plays flex support now. So there's always a possibility that he could play both. Then you have Kaneki and Insane as the other two DPS players on this team, or the main two DPS players on this team. Kaneki, an Overwatch League player we didn't see a lot of. He played also some flex support in the past, so kind of an interesting thing, but he's definitely the flex support or flex damage dealer on this team. And then you have Insane, who is the more dedicated hit scan player. So I think this team has the potential to get out of this group. I think Rock is a little more consistent, a little more solid. I have a little more faith in that team's core. But Team CC certainly is one of those teams that could, make Rock Esports kind of work for it and see if they can maybe knock them off and take over that top spot in this group. It is absolutely possible, and it is possible that they are the team that gets out of here instead of Rock Esports, but I would say Rock Esports is the favorite. That, of course, leaves Blade and Team Equal as the other two teams. This Blade core, the majority of the players on this team, played on a relatively middling team back in the Overwatch League, kind of open and contenders era in 2023. Played on a team known as NGUK. Wasn't great. They didn't really find a ton of success in that season that they played, but it has been a little while since then. And the other team, of course, Team Equal. I'm not familiar with the players in this roster at all. If they're playing Sojourn, this is a dangerous, dangerous duo. You put Leave on Genji, you put Leave on Tracer, you put Leave on Pharah, you can put Leave on Hangzhou, you can put Leave on so many heroes. I'm honestly excited when Freya comes out to see Leave on Freya, because I think that'll be a really good look for him. And you bolster that, of course, with Aprita. I don't think we're going to see a ton of Aprita, but another kind of hit scan player in the event that you need a little bit more flexibility there. Very, very good player there. You have Gushui, the Primal Blade, maybe my favorite tank player to ever play Overwatch. Absolutely incredible player. Easily one of the best that we've ever seen touch Winston and just touch the game in general in that tank role. Absolutely phenomenal. And they bring in Ligue, or Elegy, I think is the way his name is actually supposed to be pronounced, and I am just now learning, who's going to cover more of your off tanks. So your Sigma, your Diva, your Zarya. I don't know if he is their Mauga player. I don't know who they put there for that, but there's a very real possibility this team has kind of what we saw last year with Team Falcons, where on the maps where you can play Winston or you can play Ball or you can just play those tankers where Gushui is really, really good, you're gonna put Gushui in, but a lot of the other maps they may just take him out and put Elegy in to really kind of go for what they actually need to do. Because obviously I think he's going to provide a little more flexibility to this team in that tank role. That helps a lot. And then you have the backline of Mew and Monk. If you're an Overwatch League veteran, you might see the name Mew and you don't recognize it. That is the new name of Yveltal or Xerneas. Now it's Mew. That is now the newest name that he's going with. Really good player. I think, as much as I like Lengsa, I think Lengsa is a very good main support player. I think Mew is a bit better. I think Mew at least provides a little more flash to his play. Lengsa is one of those players, in my opinion, like, he's not losing you games. He's really, really good. He can get you where you need to go. And he is one of the strengths of that Rock Esports roster. But to me, Mew kind of has a lot of those same things. And yeah, Mew might feed a little bit. It's almost like Lee Jae Gon, right? Like you might have a map or a moment where Mew loses you a game or loses you a map because he goes a little too deep and does a little bit of feeding. But he also can make plays to win you games, which is a really huge addition. And you have Monk, who I think is another one of my favorite players maybe ever. Really good flex support player. One of my favorite, period. Just such a great player, such a fun player to watch. Really, this is a phenomenal roster. This should be the team that wins China in general. They should easily win this group. There's no real question, in my opinion, about that. Especially because I know they played Team XX in qualifiers and it was not even close. Casanova, though, throwing that out there. Casanova, watch out for Casanova. Can have some good moments there. Now, there are a couple of other players that I do want to kind of point out in this region to kind of look out for, because I think, to me, the biggest issue here that I look at in this group is you have, once again, who I think top to bottom of some of the best players in the region, and it's going to be very hard to have a full team compete to topple a team like that. But that's not to say there are not other players on other teams that are good that can help kind of carry teams a little bit further and push them over the edge. You have someone like Jimmy on Super Levi. Everybody knows and loves Jimmy. If you know the Overwatch League, you know Jimmy. Spent time with the Chengdu Hunters for a little bit, was on the Guangzhou Charge in 2023 when they began the year dominating China, or dominating Asia for like seemingly out of nowhere, and then they kind of fell off. But a very good hit scan player. One of those players that just everybody loves to watch. Just a fan favorite player and a very talented DPS player at that. Same goes for Argon on Team XX, who, Casanova also on that team. Very interesting team to look at there. Could provide some really good play there in that damage role. But this is a group that really is, once again, to lose. They have just the talent in their favor. They are, and I don't say this lightly, when this team plays at their best, they are comparable to the best teams that Korea has ever produced. Now, the problem now, if you want to talk about the team here, the biggest problem they will face is the fact that Korea has just two really good super teams with Falcons and Crazy Raccoon that are maybe better than any Korean Overwatch League team that was ever created. And that is what they're trying to topple, which could be very difficult. But at their best, they are comparable to some of the best teams that have ever played. They got second in the Overwatch World Cup in 2023. They got they got third place in the 2023 Overwatch League playoffs. Like, this is a really good team. And they have really, 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 really good players and a really solid core. And to me, that is the team that I am most interested in seeing how they perform in China. Like, if they look dominant in China, that's really good. It's a really good sign for them going into the tournament in Hangzhou to potentially win that tournament. You got to look good. China needs to be easy for them to win in much the same way that NA was for the Defiant last year, right? Or what we're seeing right now in EMEA with Virtus Pro, where like they're getting pushed around one or two games, a stage, and still winning, right? Like they're getting pushed. I don't want to push around. They're getting pushed a bit. That's the kind of thing that I want to see out of once again in this stage, because they have the talent to be that good. Can they stay in form well enough to take China pretty convincingly and put themselves in a position to be pretty good and qualify for the Champions Clash in Hangzhou? Because if they do, like, to be fair, if they win this tournament and they win China, they go into the tournament in Hangzhou and they go up against Virtus Pro, which is a very winnable game. Even if they get second, they play against Nightmare. No matter what result they get, it is a very, very winnable game for this team if they can make it in. And they should be able to. They have the talent to be able to make it. And I don't think this group that they're in really is the group that's going to push them. If a team is going to take them out, it has to be Team CC or it has to be Rock Esports. It's the only real option I see. It is a single elimination bracket. There is room for upsets, but I just don't really see it happening with them. I think they're just too good. And they would have to win, one game in the qualifiers to make it that far. No, I think the downside is, because they're in Group B, if they win the group, they would have to play either Rock or Team CC in round 2. So it's possible, right? I actually think once they make it to that round, they actually have a harder path. But overall, they should be fine, and I think they should win the group pretty easily. I'm sorry, the other three teams here. I just don't know enough about what you've got to really say for sure if you can push it. There's players I really, really like. Like I said, keep your eyes on Jimmy. Keep your eyes on Argon and Casanova. Those are players to keep your eyes on because I think they are the kinds of players that as China develops, you're going to see potentially other teams pulling from these other rosters. We're already seeing it in Korea. It was just, I'm recording this video on Tuesday. It was announced Tuesday morning that Vigilante was moved to T1 from the Gamer. And I think there's a lot of other moves that might happen with T1 taking players from the Gamer, because the teams and organizations that have more money are going to try to take some of these bigger names, bigger players. And so I'm curious to see what happens here in China. And if we see the kind of rise of a fourth team that pulls some of those other really good players together, or if one of those Team CC or Rock Esports pulls some other good talent from some other teams as well. I don't know yet. We will see what happens. But right now, my assessment really is this is once again's region to lose. Team CC and Rock Esports, they're the other two teams competing for that second spot. It's going to be those three most likely competing. But we'll see what happens. We'll follow this weekend. We'll come back next week and we'll talk about the bracket for China so we can give a little look and see where we are. It'll be a little more interesting to kind of have a better idea of where things are going. And then once we know who the teams are, of course, playing Hangzhou, we'll talk about that when that happens. So let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on this region, on China. If you think once again is going to be as good as I think they will be, let me know in the comments down below. And if you think I'm going to be surprised by another team, let me know down below as well. I'd love to hear your opinions on China, because it's an interesting region. We haven't seen it in a while. I think it's great to see it back, and I'm curious to see what happens. And if you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing. Your support does help out a lot with the channel. That's going to be all for me for today. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.